Alrighty. Okay. All right. Welcome to the daily wrap-up and Q&A for Bama Bug Fest on the web for the Pollinators Day on July 21st. We've been collecting all of your questions and comments about the event content during the day, and we'll be asking our panel of experts to help us answer as many as we can. These daily wrap-ups happen live every day at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. My name is James Scott. I'm the education assistant for the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum and a member of the Bama Bug Fest Planning Committee. We are joined this evening by Dr. Meaghan Pimsler, entomologist and bee researcher at the University of Alabama, and Rebecca Johnson, communications specialist for UA Museums. You might recognize them from the programs we've had throughout the day. They've been kind enough to agree to come back this evening for a quick Q&A session. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for helping us with the event today. How do you guys think it went?
I think it went pretty well. I think we actually we drew some comic book characters today, so that was really fun, and they came out looking like Bumblebee, so I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, she's a great teacher. If he can walk me through drawing something that looks like what she's trying to get me to draw.
Yeah, I'm terrible at drawing things. So if I can make anything look like something, that's a win.
Excellent. Yeah, I was able to watch it. I dare not try drawing it myself because I'm very, very bad at drawing altogether. But it seemed like a lot of her, like the way that she was guiding everyone was very step by step. It looks very easy to do.
Yeah.
And seeing some of the things that were posted online, they looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think
people really knew what they were doing.
I think you should do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and try it. Yeah.
I'm gonna go back and do Spider-Man. I was defeated before, but now that I've done Bumblebee with her, I feel more at ease, and I'm ready to do Spider-Man.
You could tackle the harder one now.
Mm-hmm.
Should we show what we drew? I guess we could do that. Let me see if I can pull that up.
I can put it in front of my face if we want. Ooh, that's nice.
So let's see. This one was Allie Sorley's education outreach coordinator at the Alabama Museum of Natural History. She did a great job. This one is mine.
Nice.
It turned out okay for someone who can't draw. And this is Dr. Pimsler's, which Dr. Pimsler, you can talk to the way you changed her look based on the actual real world bees, if you want.
Yeah, so since her name was Bumblebee, I wanted to make her look more like a bumblebee. Not that all comic book characters have to look like the animals that they have names based on, but since I was drawing her, I figured I could do what I wanted. And so one of the things that I did was give her what's called geniculate antennae. That means elbowed antennae. So Bumblebee have antennae that are sort of like little L-shaped things. And you can see on my drawing that I gave her these little elbowed antennae. And then the group of insects, bees, wasps, and ants that bumblebees are a part of the group Hymenoptera, which means married wing. And so in this group of insects, they have little hooks on the back pair of wings that hold on to the front pair of wings so that both wings move together at the same time. And so if you look at my drawing, you can see that there are two wings. There's one wing, there's the wings behind it, which I did a bad job making that depth obvious, but I put the two wings together that are touching. Whereas if you compare it to the other drawings or the way that she directed us to do it, the wings are separated from each other. So yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
I was just going to pull up kind of a version of Bumblebee with the wings that Sarah had drawn for DC Comics. So that's what her finished version looked like in the comic.
And you can see the antennae are sort of straight. That would be known as filiform, sort of thread-like. And that is one of hundreds, tens, maybe only tons, but one of many kinds of ways that insect antennae can look like. So there are lots of insects that have antennae that are straight thread looking things like that. Just not bumblebees.
Are there other types of bees that have straighter antennae? or?
No, there are so many kinds of bees. Most bees are actually solitary, so it's just one bee living by herself, taking care of her offspring. And there are a lot of solitary antennae, or solitary bees that have these long filiform antennae.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, so you were talking about how you changed a little bit. Is there anything else that was part of this character's, like the suit that they used, or anything, any like the details that we were given during the live stream that play up to what the bumblebees are, or
I definitely appreciate that the suit's colors are black and yellow, because bumblebees are primarily black and yellow. There are, like honeybees, those are brown and kind of gold yellow. So, if she had a brown yellow combo on her suit, it wouldn't say bumblebee to me. It would say honeybee.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Is this the first time that either of you have been introduced to this character? Because I guess prior to hearing about it today, I didn't know that this was a DC character at all. I know that you guys had talked about earlier, like the lack of DC bug-related characters in the DC universe, and more so in the Marvel universe. But I had no idea that there was a Bumblebee character in the DC universe.
I didn't know.
There are a few, like there's Blue Beetle and Ambush Bug, and of course Hellgrammite that we've talked about with Bama Bug Fest on the web. But I would have to do some research, but I would hazard a guess that maybe Marvel has more insect characters. But Bumblebee, I think I first sort of met the character in Young Justice. I haven't caught up on the latest season, but I did watch the first 2 seasons, and in that she appeared with Guardian Mal Duncan, who we talked about is her husband in the comics. So that's where I first knew of her. And then she has gained, I think, a little bit of popularity through DC Superhero Girls, because she's one of the main cast members there. So that's where I kind of know her. But now I want to go back and watch the Teen Titans animated series again, because she apparently is in that, and I didn't know it. So that would definitely be something to watch. Yeah.
I was going to say that you'd mentioned that the superhero girls group of characters, and you talked about it earlier on the live, on the live stream. Can you remind us a little bit more about that right now?
Yeah,
just recap kind of what the superhero girls are. And
yeah, so DC Superhero Girls is mostly targeted for younger comic book readers. It might seem more geared towards girls, but I mean, there are guy characters in it. You would probably like it because the Flash is in there sometimes, and so they'll have lots of characters from the DC universe in there. It's not just the female characters. They, from what I remember initially from the launch of it, it's been revamped, so they kind of did a redesign of it since it launched. But the original premise was that they were sort of teenagers going to a school for superheroes so that they could learn how to be superheroes. And so there's like Wonder Woman and Batgirl and Supergirl and Bumblebee and Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. And so there's that whole crew of characters there. So it's mostly for young readers to try to get them into comics. But anybody can read them.
There's no shame in that, right?
No shame. They're good. I mean, the art's really good, and the characterizations are a little different and unique. So it's a fun, different take on the DC world.
Maybe a little less, I guess, serious for younger readers than some of the more, I guess, darker parts of the DC universe that we've been seeing recently.
Yeah. It would include a little less violence and maybe a little bit more interpersonal conflict.
Yeah.
yeah. Sarah mentioned that Bumblebee was a character who wasn't as confident. They do play up some of those sort of internal things with the characters quite a bit. I know Miss Martian on that series, she's a character who can shapeshift, and so sometimes she can phase out if she, and disappear if she wants to, if she feels like she doesn't want to be seen, those kinds of things. So things that, young girls, teenage girls might be able to relate to.
Yeah, definitely. Completely drawn a blank. So earlier when I was watching the video, I was thinking about other DC characters, and I thought of 2 in the Flash TV show. I know that you said that the Hellgrammite was in Supergirl, I could only think of two that were in the Flash TV show, and I don't know how relevant they are. They're not bumblebees by any means, but one of them was
Cicada?
it was Cicada, which was something that I don't think any people liked it. People didn't like it, but then there was also
it wasn't very well received.
Yeah, and there was also I think she was in the second or third season as one of the just a one-off villain, where she controlled a bunch of like remote control tiny bees, but they're like the little robot bees, the nanites or something like that.
Yes. I have that in my memory. I can't remember what her name was. What was her character's name?
I looked it up and I completely blanked on it. But I think she was they called her the BugEyed.
Oh, the BugEyed Bandit, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, because she was using the nanite beetles to break into things.
That's
if I remember correctly. But so some of the behaviors of that type of working together as large swaths of remote controlled beetles and or bugs like that. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of how honeybees work, or bumblebees even like that? Maybe Dr. Pimsler can tell us a little bit more how bumblebees work together in groups, if they do work in groups. Maybe not to help with crime, but to help with other things.
Yes, bumblebees and honeybees, their survival depends upon working together. So they do work together. It's a little bit difficult to watch them in their hives without disturbing them in the case of bumblebees. So it's not totally clear how much of their behavior is sort of putting on a show, essentially, because their hive's been disturbed. But bumblebees are really smart and they're social learners. And so these researchers did a study where they trained a bumblebee to move a small soccer ball into a little goal. And every time it did that, it would get a little sugar source. So they had a pen that they put a black and yellow striped thing on the end of, and that was their fake bumblebee to teach their bumblebee what to do. And then once that bumblebee got good at it, they put it in the soccer pitch with a bumblebee that hadn't learned how to play soccer. And it watched the other bumblebee play soccer, put the ball into the goal, and it shared in the sugar reward. And it learned very quickly after that how to do it. So bumblebees learn really fast from each other in a way that they, so there's really some part of the communication there that's important.
Yeah,
did they put together a soccer team? Did they get a full team together?
I haven't heard of that, but there are all kinds of new sports coming out with people. Like those marble run things. Those are kind of exciting. So who knows what the future will hold for us.
I would watch that game. I would be into it.
It's probably a bit like watching puppies and kittens try to play soccer, though. Just saying.
Well, every year they have the puppy and kitty bowl, right before the Super Bowl. So this could be the bee bowl.
The bee bowl, fun. And then honeybees, they communicate with a combination of odors and dances. So, for example, when honeybees are trying to decide where to found a new hive, a bunch of workers will go out and they'll scout out different places. They'll find their favorite and they'll come back into the hive, and there's a specific part of the hive that's like the dance floor. And so they'll do their little dance that tells the other honeybees where this place is. And so those honeybees will go and look at it and come back. And if they like that place, they'll also do the little dance. But sometimes what happens is, if a bee only kind of likes the place that it found, it'll do the dance for a while and then get tired of it. But if a bee is certain that this is the best place, not only will it do the dance forever, but it'll sort of force other bees to do the dance with them, even if they haven't gone to visit the site yet. And so it's through this process where the bees are doing dances and recruiting other bees to go check out the site and do the dances with them, that eventually they're all doing the same cha-cha, and that's when they make the decision to go to the new place.
Once you've convinced all your friends that this club is really cool, then you get everyone to go there.
And they do the same thing with floral resources. So if they find a field that's got great flowers, they'll also tell the other bees where it is and how to go. And depending on how good the resources is, it affects how long they'll do the dances for.
That's really interesting. And I guess that's a good segue into going into the next little bit, or to the next video that we had at 2 o'clock, which was the pollinators with the schoolyard roots. And they had mentioned that bees were actually very curious creatures. Would you agree with that, Dr. Pimsler, or they're more solitary like the bumblebees?
I'm not, well, so I would, what does
I guess the other bees
mean, I guess, right? I'm not totally clear on what is meant by curious in this context. Bumblebees have been studied to see if they have personalities, as it were. So this researcher developed this so they're spiders that live on flowers that sometimes blend into the flowers that will catch pollinators that come to the flowers. And so sometimes the spiders blend in and they're the same color, and sometimes the spiders aren't very good at colors and they end up on a flower that's not the same color as them. And they're easier for the bees to spot. And so the researchers used fake spiders on fake flowers. So they just cut them out with cardboard, and then they put a little sugar water on there so it was a fake flower. And if they put a fake spider on there, they put this little trap thing around the flower part. So when the bee landed on it, this trap would snap shut really fast. And you could hear that bee in there just buzzing angrily, and then it would go after a couple seconds. So the bee was totally unharmed. And they would do this a few times, and then they would see how brave were the bees. Like, if they had gotten trapped in the trap, were they more cautious when they approached flowers? Did they like land and take off, or were there bees that were more brazen? I guess part of the question was, do all bees respond the same way or not? And it's definitely the case from their research that the bees that they were working with, some of them seem to be more scared, more hesitant after this encounter with the fake spider than other bees from the same colony. I don't know if that quite addresses your curiosity question, but I think it kind of gets at consciousness in bees in a way.
Yeah, because they were mentioning about how like they had to suit up in like the bee protective suit and put the hat on and stuff like that, the veil, as they said. And the reason that blanking on her name, the junior beekeeper was saying is that the bees are very curious, so that you have to make sure that you cover everything up because they'll crawl in everywhere if they get the chance. And I didn't know if that was part of the curiosity, or if they're just like, I don't know who you are, and So my
experience in the field with honeybees and bumblebees is that they have zero interest in me when they're foraging on flowers. I can literally pet bumblebees. I'm not suggesting you do this at home. I am an expert. But I have literally just sort of pet bumblebees on their furry little bottoms while they were collecting in the field. And they were sort of like, what is that? But otherwise, they were fine. I have also had an incident where the honeybee hive keeper had come to take care of his bees about an hour before I arrived there to collect bumblebees. And even though I thought I was far enough away, the honeybees that tried to sting me on my scalp made it pretty clear that I wasn't. So I don't know if that's curiosity or like a kind of protective defensiveness, but
yeah, actually,
I'm actually glad. Oh, I was just going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that they're furry, because I did have a question about that, because I've seen some really close up, sort of macro photography pictures of bees, and they do look like they have little fur on them. Is that what purpose does that serve?
It's not totally clear exactly what it serves. Bumblebees appear to have evolved in the like Himalayan mountain regions, and they're especially numerous in areas with like high altitude or temperate regions, and they're very cold adapted. So it seems, at least in part, that the hairs help them keep heat in their body to stay warm. There may be other functions, but there are only so many scientists studying bees. But if you go out and you look at places where there are bumblebees, sometimes you'll see really big black and yellow bees that you might mistake for a bumblebee, but you can tell it's a bumblebee if it has a furry butt. If it doesn't have a furry butt, it's not a bumblebee. It's like a carpenter bee or something like that.
At that point, when you get that close to look at the bee's butt, is it too late to realize it's a bumblebee or a carpenter bee?
Carpenter bees are they seem scary. They're very curious. I would call carpenter bees curious because like when I step outside, if I've got a carpenter bee like living in the eaves above my house, that's the bee that's going to be sort of flying around me like, what are you doing here? What's going on? That's the carpenter bees. They seem very curious.
I was once told that carpenter bees had shiny butts.
Yes.
Is that how you would classify it? So carpenter bees, shiny butts, bumblebees, furry butts?
Yeah, so they don't look shiny.
Okay.
It's relatively easy to see when you're looking at them, even from far away. But we actually identify bees based on the pattern of stripe colors on their bottoms. So I look at bee butts a lot.
So they talked a little bit about using the smoker in the Pollinators episode, and well, I guess they used it in both episodes, both episodes for the Pollinators and for the apiary. What does the smoker do? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? They had mentioned it kind of makes it sound like their forest is burning down.
I suppose that's one interpretation. So my understanding is that because honeybees particularly use sense of smell to communicate with each other, the smoker basically, have you ever been around like a campfire and then all you can smell is campfire for a while? So that's basically what happens. It shuts down that mode of communication for the bees with this odor that's very strong, so they can't smell other things over it. And I do know that people have experimented and they can use like very strong floral odors. So, you know, if you've ever gone to, you know, one of those lotion stores that you walk in and feel like you're going to get knocked over, and, you know, you could do the same thing with those, but just it's cheaper for them to use some smoke than to use some of these odors. But it essentially makes the bees nose blind, so they can't communicate with each other. It doesn't work very well in bumblebees, though, because bumblebees are a little bit more independent in the way that they respond to things. And so bumblebees just get angry when you go near their hive, even if you smoke them.
Interesting. Yeah, because they had mentioned that the banana smell was an alarm pheromone. Why is it that bananas would be something that would smell, I guess, alarming to bees?
So isoamyl acetate is the name of the chemical that makes bananas smell like bananas. It is also, for reasons unknown, the smell that is released when a honeybee stings. And so honeybees have evolved so that when one individual stings you, it lets off an odor, because obviously you've been dangerous enough to that bee or to the hive, because for a honeybee, it's death when they sting you. So you were important enough predator or something to scare off that they had to sting you. And so that odor recruits other bees to also come and sting you. So it's a result of the sting itself. It's not strong enough that if you got stung by one honeybee, you'd be able to smell bananas. That's not how it works. But bees have very sensitive noses for the chemicals that they're trying to get. Technically, they're not noses. Their antennae have little things on them to sense molecules in the air, but I'm going to call them noses. It's easier. They have very sensitive noses, so they don't need as many chemical pieces to hit their nose at once for them to be able to smell it. Humans are very good at smelling things.
No, they're not. I mean, I can smell some stuff, but a lot of stuff it just like goes well over my head when I try to smell it. So in the last segment, when the Bee or Not to Be, it was one of the first things that we shot for Bama Bug Fest, and Rebecca was actually the one that helped out with producing the video and editing it for this one. Was there anything that stood out to you during the shoot or even during the editing sequences that you did that you want to talk about?
Yeah, that was a really fun day. Initially, when we talked about doing that, the idea was pitched to me that I would be putting on the bee suit and being near the bees. And I thought, I don't know if I'm maybe qualified to do that. So talked it over with Ali Sorley, and we came up with the idea of putting a GoPro on Mike, the beekeeper. And so that was a cool way to get sort of the idea of being the beekeeper without having to put the suit on. So it was a neat perspective to see him, fooling with each part of the apiary and interacting with little Jackson. And I think in the editing stage, when I was syncing up the video I shot just from my iPhone and the GoPro footage, was just the cute little things that the Jackson was doing. He was very passionate about being a beekeeper, and I think he wants to be a beekeeper. He wants to have his own beehive. So he's really trying to learn from Mike and trying to, learn what to do and learn about bees. And so it was just kind of cute going through the footage, because he would get a little bit of the, I guess, some of the honey off the apiary and sort of sneak it in under his suit. And what you don't see, what I sort of cut out, because I just for time's sake we had a lot of that footage, but he was interacting with some of his friends. Some of his little friends came to watch them do it, and so it was neat for him to see him, little Jackson, like telling the other kids about bees and what he knew about them. So I just thought that was adorable that he had no fear. He put that suit on. He went right up to those bees, and he was passing on the knowledge that he had gained to other kids. And so I thought that was really cool.
That is really cool. Yeah, it's so interesting to see young kids so interested in something, maybe at such a young age too. Hopefully he doesn't ever lose that, because a lot of people like to buy honey. And I know that when I initially saw the video, when you shared it before we put it live, I got a little sneak peek of it. I had asked if they were selling their honey at any point, because usually honey straight from the source is a little bit better than the stuff that you can buy at the store, I think. With that said, do you think, Dr. Pimsler, is there a difference between the store-bought ones and then ones that are like home farmed, if you will? Or is it kind of...
So it's a little hard to say. There are a lot of things going on here, right? So I am not totally familiar with all of the ways that honey is processed after it is taken out of the hive, and different groups do it different ways. But one thing that's the case in the United States is it has to have some pollen in it for it to really be classified as honey. There are some places that will try and filter out all of the pollen, because you can also buy bee pollen from various locations as a nutritional supplement or something like that. And so if it doesn't have any pollen in it, then it's not technically honey. Sometimes people can add other additives to it. Honey is a mix of different kinds of sugar. So, it's not just so sugar is present in the environment in lots of different forms. They're all sugars because they're made up of carbohydrate and, carbon and hydrogen. They're carbohydrates. But the number of carbons, the number of hydrogen item changes how it works. And so sugar, like that we have in our sugar bowls, is one kind. And if honey were made up of just that kind of sugar, it'll crystallize solid. And you may have had your own honey do that. And that can be because there isn't as good a ratio of the different kinds of sugars in it that would prevent it from crystallizing that way. But it's definitely appears to be the case that if you can get wildflower honey from the area that you live in, it can help you with allergies, because your body is being exposed to a small dose of the pollen that might cause you to have an allergic reaction. And so it appears that eating local wildflower honey can actually help reduce the severity of your allergic reactions when there's a lot of pollen in the air.
Yeah, I've heard that before, which is really interesting. I always thought it was kind of like I guess maybe an old wives' tale, that it's like, oh, just have a spoonful of honey in it, you'll be immune to whatever allergies are.
I did not state it that strongly.
Yeah, correct. That's the old wives' tale, said that if you take it, then you won't have allergies. But
I just heard to eat more honey during pollen season. That's what I heard. So should I be eating more honey during that time of the year?
Sure.
I can do that.
I am not a nutritional. The other thing that's really cool is if you can get a hold of it, honey from single flower sources tastes really different, right? So there are people or apiaries that specialize in honey from only a certain kind of flower. And it's actually really crazy how different honey can taste depending on the flower that it's from. And so if you ever have an opportunity to experience that, I really encourage you or the viewers to try that. I really like Tupelo honey. It is delicious. But I've had some sunflower honey that was really nice. And I think clover honey is always, it's sort of the go-to common one, but it's quite tasty. There's also actually a kind of bee in South America that makes honey. They are stingless bees. But they don't live in as big a group and they don't make as much honey. And so it is so expensive.
I was going to say a lot of honey is already pretty pricey if you are buying it locally or even at the supermarket, which is odd. But I can't imagine if it's even more selective from the one in Africa being even more expensive. I guess with that being said, have you ever tried to make your own honey? Do you happen to have an apiary?
I do not have an apiary. I am not a trained beekeeper. I have worked with lab colonies of bumblebees. Bumblebees don't really make honey because the colonies only last for 1 year. The queens only live for a year. So they don't make honey because they don't need to store food to make them over the winter. So there was none of that.
Okay. And so we know that, like, I guess we talk a lot about bees, like everything here was all bees, but you had mentioned earlier that that there are other pollinators out there, I think including like wasps and beetles, and then some sort of like sometimes mammals.
Yep.
Do you have a short list of things that are also pollinators?
Sure. Insects and flying things. No, there's lots of things that are pollinators. Anything that visits a flower is a pollinator. And, you know, sometimes the flowers that they visit, so for example, when I'm out in the field, if I see a flower that's blue, I usually expect to see like bumblebees or carpenter bees or maybe honeybees. Whereas if I see a flower that's white, I usually expect to see beetles or flies or occasional wasps on them. So there are certainly like different kinds of flowers that different animals like. Butterflies are pretty common. Anything that can pick up pollen in one flower and move it to another flower is a pollinator. And so there are hummingbirds, bats, mice. Yep, here's a box I put together with the Museum of Natural History of some common pollinators of Alabama. So these are all insects that you can find in Alabama. So there's like hundreds of different kinds of bees. There are lots of flies, some of which look like bumblebees, but actually aren't pollinators at all. And then others look like bumblebees and are. There's lots of beetles that visit flowers. And then we've got the butterflies and moths, which would be the most common ones that you'll see in Alabama.
And I've always heard that like bats are also really good pollinators, but I never really thought of bats when I think of pollinators, because usually it's always just, you know, bees. Of course, always just bees, maybe butterfly here and there, but it's always surprising to hear that like, oh, this bats were doing things too.
Yeah. Bats are particularly important, I think, in like cactus flowers. Yeah. These are all pollinators. One's really pretty, dog-bane beetle. This is actually a picture. You can kind of see the two wings hooked together. I'm sorry that it's blurry. It's hard to take a picture of fast-moving small insects. You can see that you can kind of see that it either looks like one wing, but it's actually two wings stuck together. And then you can also see the little bend in the antennae. So, and the furry butt. So this is a bumblebee. And yeah, the other thing that bumblebees will visit is fallen fruit. So later on in the summer, when like the pears are falling off the trees or the grapes are ripening. You'll find bees, wasp ants, and other pollinators that usually get their sugar from flowers visiting these fallen fruits. You should be really careful when you approach these, because often when the fruits have fallen to the ground, they are slightly fermented, and so they're slightly alcoholic. And drunk bumblebees bumble more than normal bumblebees. And so I've gotten stung by drunk bumblebees more often than I've been stung by sober bumblebees. True fact.
So is that something that, because you said that the stinging bumblebees, or when a bumblebee stings you, that it's pretty much their last thing that they do. So
That's
is it?
honeybees.
Oh, honeybees. Okay, sorry. I was
Bumblebees
gonna say, is it something that
over and over again? If she, say, drunkenly crawls up your pants leg, she can sting you several times on the way out.
Okay. I think I had him confused again.
It's okay. Yeah, this is a Colorado potato beetle. They're very pretty, but they also eat potatoes and other related plants like tomatoes. Those are also native to the Americas. And you can kind of see, if you squint really hard, or if you've maybe got it in full screen, you can see that this insect doesn't have any bend in its antenna. So it's got the sort of straight antenna, more like we were talking about on the bumblebee character. And this is a salt marsh moth. I think they're very pretty. And this one has, so some moths have these big crazy antennae that look like feather dusters. Those ones usually fly at night. And then you've got moths that are more often flying during the daytime, and they tend to have more simple antennae.
All right, nice. All right. I don't know if we have any comments or questions. I haven't seen any come in lately. Have you seen any, Rebecca?
No, but I think there's some enjoyment about the bee butt talk, which I also I also appreciate it, because it helps with identifying the different kinds of bees. So that's helpful for me. Yeah, because I was curious about the furry butts.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was adorable.
Adorable butts. And it's funny because, you know, when they're some flowers are really flat, right? Like a daisy is really flat, whereas other flowers have like a tube shape. And bumblebees have to really stick their whole front end in there to get to the pollen. And so you just see this little furry butt with these wings, and then the flowers sort of moving around as they're busy in there getting stuff out.
So should the character of Bumblebee in the comics, should her suit have fur on it, do you think? Like if she had a design to her costume, should it be textured?
Sure. If she could have a velvety suit, that would make it more like a bumblebee. I mean, there's a limit to what we can do, right? Like she doesn't have 6 pairs of like arm leg combos, you know, like 3 pairs of those. So there's only so much that I think is reasonable. What I really like is so bumblebees on their back legs, that's where they store their pollen. I don't know if any of my pictures had that. They have these specially shaped back legs that they're females that hold the pollen on their legs. They're called corbicula. And they can be huge. They can have so much stuff. It's like having a whole backpack on your back leg. And so I guess if she could have like a storage thing on her thighs. I think that'd be good.
I think there's so much more they can do with the character of Bumblebee.
Sure. I mean, so as a scientist, of course, I want us to make everything as scientifically accurate as possible. Sure. Even in our fun make-believe world, like the DC universe. But it's okay to make things up and have fun that aren't totally scientifically accurate.
Definitely.
I think they already play with a lot of different kind. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say they already take liberties with science in DC Comics, so that seems right.
All of fiction does that. So has the voting been going well for the art competition?
Yeah, actually, they have. We have gotten quite a bit of likes on a lot of the pages. So if that appreciate you reminding us. So if you want to vote in the art contest, we had an art contest for the first 2 weeks of Bama Bug Fest on the web, and you can we're letting people vote for their favorites. So if you go to bamabugfest.org, you'll find links to all of the different categories, or you can go to the different Facebook pages for the Alabama Museum of Natural History or the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum or the Tuscaloosa Public Library. You'll find the galleries of the pictures that people submitted of original artwork of insects that they saw and liked in their area. So most likes win. So go and like the pages of the artwork that you like the best, and we'll tally them up, and whoever gets the most likes is going to be featured in the Museum Chronicle. So it's pretty cool.
How much longer is the voting open?
It'll be open until Friday at 5.
All right, nice.
So there's still time.
I started to work on something, but I didn't finish it in time to submit it. So, but I made a little fly portrait.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
What kind of fly is that?
I forgot. I know what I chose, but I forgot what kind of fly it is. It looks like a blowfly to me, or a flesh fly.
Huh. That's very good.
Thank you. I'll be honest, I have a light board, so it's like this big piece of plastic that can light up. So I put a picture, and then I traced over the picture, and then I painted the picture. So Smart. I might have cheated a little bit.
That's okay. It looks great.
You can still enter it in. If we do decide to do it for next year, you can save it and enter it in next year.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Or maybe I'll do something totally new.
Or you could do a bee.
I felt like since it wasn't something that I had gone out and seen locally, also that maybe it wasn't quite what you guys were looking for.
Still impressive.
I think we can let it slide a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, like I said, I don't see any other comments. So I guess we could probably go ahead and start wrapping it up. I wanted to thank you for joining us for the Bama Bug Fest on the web today. Make sure to check out on Thursday, July 23rd, for the summer senses, sights, sounds, and smells, which it pretty much explains itself. As always, the content appears at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. With the daily wrap-ups at 7 p.m. All of these are at Central Standard Time. If you aren't able to join us for the live presentations, you can always come back and watch them as archived videos on our social media sites, on YouTube channels, and we have it on our the linked handy resource guide on the website, which is bamabugfest.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our event partners' social media sites and YouTube channels. As always, we want to thank the UA museums, the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum, the Alabama Museum of Natural History, the Department of Research and Collections at UA's Rogers Library, and the Tuscaloosa Public Library for all of the work that they did in organizing this event. And we want to thank our guests for helping us out today. Thank you, Meaghan. And we appreciate sharing a little of your time and expertise with us.
It's always a gift to be able to talk about bugs.
Yeah. Especially good bee butts.
I mean, bee butts are adorable. So.
All right. I guess if that's all of it, we'll go ahead and we'll see everyone on Thursday.
All right. Have a great night.
Night.
Bye, everyone.